question that I just want everyone to hear straight up as you just introduce who you are, what you do, is just that single biggest opportunity as we shape change in the next 10 years. So you've spoken about truth, but just introduce again who you are and then that single biggest opportunity.
Hi again, I'm Dom. You might remember me from 3 minutes ago. Yeah, I'm going to stick with, I think, finding ways to tell the truth even when it's hard about not just the risks, but also the challenges and the opportunities that we've got at the moment.
Hi, I'm Sue Horton. I'm the CEO of QBE. I've been in this role for about 4 years. My background is in both finance and in CEO roles. I think really interesting talk. And I think at the center of all of that is the customer. And our challenge is going to be, how do we understand the customer and help them transition through what's a period of really rapid change?
Hi everyone, Chris McKinnon. I'm the Regional Director for Lloyd's across the Asia Pacific, Middle East and Africa region. Based in Singapore, so I'm one of the 2 people from Singapore here today. Thank you for having me. The view that I have from my perspective is total innovation. It's about looking beyond just innovative products and actually looking at the entire industry, the fundamental plumbing and building blocks as to how we operate, and modernizing and innovating that across the piece.
Hi everyone, I'm Gary Oakley. I think a lot of people know me as the NIBA president, so it's great to be back on stage again this year. My challenge for us in the industry is how do we actually change the dynamic of brokers to be the intersection of risk capital providers as opposed to brokers, government, but importantly to serve our clients. So to me, there's a real interaction of that's changing. We saw the demographic slide, we saw a range of technology slide, but that whole demographic shift to us, to me, creates an intersection of opportunity.
We're going to take a dive straight up into our theme. And the first theme I want to look at is consumerism and climate change and the insurance solution. So how we can reconcile and look at those rising costs of insurance within the rise of global risks. So I might start with you on that global level.
Well, I don't think I need to tell this room that the price of a premium relates to the cost of the risks that we're covering. And if you look at the last few years, that cost has really been driven higher. And there've been a number of changes, some of which Dom spoke about, which have really driven that. The first one has been climate change and the impact of weather events, which have grown in frequency and they've grown in severity. In 2024, the global insurance industry paid out $137 billion for natural perils events. That was the 5th year in a row where it exceeded 100 billion. That never used to happen. That might be once every 20 years. We've had 5 years in a row. On top of that, the number of properties that are built in high-risk areas increases and continues to increase, and the value of that property increases as well with inflation. And if you add to that COVID and the supply chain disruption that we've had, those inflationary pressures have come through and really forced up the cost of premium as we go forward. So it comes back to, what do we have to do to be able to mitigate that risk? Because if we don't mitigate it, the cost of premium will continue to increase and increase. And many of you in the room may be aware that we recently had a delegation to London and Europe with the Assistant Treasurer, the Honourable Daniel Molino, and the CEOs of all of the major insurers and the ICA. And we went over there to do 2 things. The first one was to learn about what this is looking like on a global stage. And the second one was to represent what we're doing here in Australia, because we'd had the shock of reinsurance costs on the back of the climate change issues that were coming through. So we were part of Team Australia. We might be competitors when we were here, but over there we were representing what we're doing as a country about resilience and how we're working together in a public-private partnership to address some of those risks. And what we learned is that there are countries everywhere who are looking into this at the moment, and they're really starting to think about what mechanisms, be it a pool, be it other mechanisms, to be able to mitigate risks. But that if you don't mitigate them and you just disguise them through subsidised premium, you end up in a bigger issue than we've got today. So these were some of the things that we really want to keep exploring and working with government to go, how do we find a way through this as a country?
What about that local level?
Yeah, I'll take that. Look, I'm just throwing it onto our head. Definitely it's a global issue. There's no doubt. We're not unique in that serve. Our economy and our population is not that big. And you go around the globe, and I was fortunate enough to be part of the World Federation of Insurance Intermediaries forum in the US earlier in the year, and when you start to talk about other geographies, it's absolutely the same issue they're facing with climate and significant risk. But I guess when I look around the risk mitigation conversation that's led by the ICA and NIMA and other parts of government, I don't think there's enough money in the government to be able to risk mitigate Australia. So, not in my time anyway. So at the end of the day, to me, it's about what innovative solutions we can create and provide. And I think we represent consumers, clients. That's our solution, and innovation we need to try to find. And, if you go around the globe and you think about the Californian Fair Plan, if you think about the national flood insurance protection pools that exist, that's what the US talk about. But only 6% of people have flood cover in the US. So that's not a real solution, I think, that solves the problem. So I keep thinking around what brokers lead. We lead mutuals. We have conversations about reciprocals. We have fast tracks. We have the Aon placement facility. This is all ways for us to create access to our own capital, our own risk capital, working with the insurers. I think that's a really important part, and government, which gets me back to that whole intersection of where we as NIBA and brokers need to get to, because I don't think we keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same result. That's my take on it. And we can be different. We can lead the conversation. If we sit and stagnate, we won't. But if we get ahead of the curve, we will. So.
I've got plenty of questions coming through. I guess connecting to our next theme, which is AI technology and innovation. So how transformative will AI be in the sector? I was going to come to you on this, Dom, but there's a question that's come through from the audience, and they want to know if they had $1,000 to invest today, what company should they invest in?
So let me consult my AFSL. Obviously, this advice is general in nature and not meant to be taken. I think the truth is, at the moment, you're taking your life in your hands, trying to pick winners in the AI space. There is an enormous reckoning coming from an AI bubble investment for the AI sector is in my view, in a massive bubble. And I have concerns from a sustainability of investment perspective that the nature of the infrastructure that's being invested in and across all of the AI space is not kind of durable and portable in the way that like transport investment infrastructure is. The data centers are going to be rendered obsolete at some point. And so I think, so the answer is I don't know which one. And it should have been NVIDIA 3 years ago. But I think the much more important question is, what's the nature of the AI investment in the business that we should be making? And I think the theme that has already come across a lot on the panel that I imagine will do is the ones I think we should be backing the investments that we think make the most durable and value-laden difference to the customers, that are bringing innovative approaches to solving their problems in new ways, or allowing us to solve their problems in new ways more efficiently. I think if we can just maintain the same value orientation that we put over so many of our investments, we're much more likely than not to back winners, in my view.
So Dom's obviously coming from that outsider's point of view, but what about from the broker and insurance perspective?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think this is early technology. We all got really excited and thought we better start using AI for everything, and we won't have jobs in like 2 years' time. And I think you step back from that a bit and you go, what are you trying to achieve strategically, and what are you trying to do for the customer? And AI is another tool that we can start to use, and it's still formative technology. So we're trying, like everybody, use cases to go, what does that do? Does it deliver something? But when it's delivered what do we do with that? Like, do we reinvest it in the customer? Is it an efficiency play? We're not quite sure yet. So I think it's still evolving, but it will help us make decisions. It will help us make better think about risk that our customers are facing and how we deal with that. And it will deliver efficiencies at some point. I just don't think we're quite there yet.
I was just going to add to that, Brooke, that I've been in the industry long enough to remember about 35 years ago when the very first desktop computer was put on my desk. And everybody was convinced that it was the end of the world as we knew it, and that we were all going to be out of jobs, and that it was going to make us so much more efficient that life would change forever. All it did was make us do more work. It just enabled us to actually do more work. So I think the expectations on the productivity from a human side were just increased by the access to the technology rather than actually replaced. So I think that's something from a AI point of view is going to be quite interesting to watch. It'll just mean we're probably doing more work, but less of the work that can be automated using AI.
One here for Sue as well. They want to know, how was Team Australia received, and what changed through the minister's perspective?
I think we were well received in that we're actually trying to attack the resilience issue. So things like the hazards insurance partnership, the fact that we're there with the government sitting alongside us and having a lot of conversations, which has been a shift over the last couple of years, and that we've put in place mechanisms like the cyclone pool and so on to do that. There are concerns that we continue to build in flood zones, and how do we stop that? So really there's warning signs there on how we do that. But the key learnings were, don't mask the risk signal by just subsidizing premium. Try and attack the underlying causes. And secondly, look at what everyone else around the world has done, which is what the government's taking away, to go, how do we best deploy that for our unique circumstances in Australia? We mustn't forget that we have everything from floods to bushfires and everything in between. And we're the only country that really suffers in such a way. And therefore, we're at the leading edge of a lot of this.
Dom, here we've got someone asking, how do we encourage and promote that robust truth-telling in the modern workplace, where we need to be increasingly mindful of how different demographics handle being told difficult truths? You work with over 500,000 people every year. You work with a number of different businesses, but you'd hear this every day.
100%. I have no doubt that everyone on the panel will have many things to say about this for sure. To boil it down, I think the two most important words, if we want to be serious about having cultures of truth-telling in organizations, are psychological safety. We can have no reasonable expectation that anyone will tell the truth if they're scared. Scared for what it means for them, scared for what it means for their team, scared for what it means for their job. People would literally rather crash into a mountain than tell the truth. And the empirical data behind that is, and I'm writing about this in an upcoming book, you can code black box recorder conversations from flight decks where junior captains, co-pilots, know they're about to crash and they're still too scared to speak up to tell the senior scary captain, dude, like there's ice on the wings. We'd literally rather fly into a mountain than have a scary conversation. So I think it's beholden on particularly senior people in organizations to create environments where people feel safe, and like that they don't have to take their life in their hands to have the conversation. And that flows all the way upwards. Like, I think boards need to do a good job of making sure that executives feel safe to tell them hard things. And obviously it flows all the way through to shareholder groups. So yeah, for me, it's about creating safety for people to feel like they can have the honest conversation in a way that's not taking their life in their hands, literally or metaphorically.
And we've got one for the whole panel here. How challenging are the demographic issues that Dom's just referring to, both the vertical and the horizontal issues that are part of industry every day?
Let me kick that one off. I just think the demographic of the vertical integration is really interesting. Many of you may also use, we're certainly at Marsh and JL2, we use offshore services to a certain degree. We have a program of it's a back office process. We don't have any front office discussions through our service centres. But where it works the best is where we actually make them our team. So basically, I have a team of 15 people sitting in Mumbai that join our town halls. They're in the communication. So it's actually a really intriguing part of the offshoring, and the AI now is great in and around that. Where it works poorest is where it's them and us. And so the whole demographic of how do you really embrace your team and where your team is now is really changed. And we see lots of examples where it works well and lots where it doesn't. And we're using those good examples to try and share. So that's a demographic change that we've dealt with over the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years. And And there's a lot of positivities coming out of it from a client engagement perspective, because we are turning things around much quicker, but they're doing work that helps and supports as opposed to, delivers at the front end. We still have our teams delivering the front end in service. So just an example of how we've tried to embrace it, and it's changing dramatically.
And I just to add on that, over the last 2 years, I've mentioned I've been running this region, which is basically everything that's not the Americas or Europe. So it's 150 odd countries, and it's about 80% of the world's population. I've got a team of 107 people across that region who are spread across 9 countries, and between them, they speak 33 different languages. And when I took it on, we had 9 separate businesses running independently and not collaborating and not communicating. And we've broken that down into centers of excellence, where we've just asked people what are they passionate about and what do they enjoy doing. And we've now got cross-culture, cross-country teams working on specific problems, solving them about twice the speed that we were before. And people are much happier in their jobs. So I think what I'm saying here is that the insurance industry, and I know we were hearing earlier about talking with one voice from Australia, representing Australia, into the European markets with Dr. Molino. There is limited risk capital in the world to back unlimited risk in the world. So we have to collaborate, and Australia as a country needs to come together to think of itself as a customer looking for risk capital. And you have to go out into the global market and pitch for it against every other country in the world who's trying to get it too. So from my perspective, looking over the last couple of years, that demographic here and the collaboration and the unity that is the Australian market and the way it comes together is what is attracting good risk capital coming into this market. So don't ever underestimate the global connectivity of our industry, and don't think local. You have to think local as part of a global mindset.
I love that, finding people that can connect through their purpose and their passion. That's wonderful. Question, are we expecting more climate disruptions in the near future? Sue, what do you think?
Well, all the stats you see would say yes. We're just heading in one direction and it never varies. So you'd have to say yes, which is why you've got to be thinking about what are we going to do? And when you look at the map you put up showing Queensland getting redder and redder, what are we going to do? We've got to think differently, and we've got to anticipate what's coming. And to Chris's point, the global markets are looking at us. It's why we go and talk to the reinsurers. It's why we go and talk to Lloyd's to go, we want your capital here, and we will do things to protect it. If we don't do that, we'll find people withdrawing, and then you get price shocks. And that's the last thing we need as an industry.
Just to add a point on that as well, Don was talking about demographics earlier and the aging population, the vertical, the lateral, etc. One of the things that we've seen is actually significant change in demographics relating to where humans like to put their assets, and they are increasingly putting them in risky places. And a lot of the loss data analysis we've done at Lloyd's over recent years shows that a lot of the increasing losses that we're allocating to climate change actually are nothing to do with climate change. They're due to geographic movement, where people are putting more assets and more wealth in riskier places. So we're concerned actually that we haven't even really started seeing the impacts of climate change on the insurance market yet. It's more about geographic demographics. So quite a scary thing to look at.
That's for us.
Referencing your comment, Chris, I work a lot in the local government public sector space. We're seeing people in the northern rivers of New South Wales, which got smashed in a flood many years, but the most recent one in 2022, people are flooding to those communities, excuse the pun, to live there, because they love the weather, they love the climate, they love the demographic that exists in there. So you've got this push-pull issue around where people want to live and the climate impacts. And then you've got also social pressures and other infrastructure pressures that go on there, which are just changing dramatically as well. So the whole demographic shift, I think, is a bigger issue in Australia, as opposed to just dealing with climate. So it's the two things side by side that are making a significant difference as to how we respond. The flip side is, in regional Australia, the centre of Australia, there's a massive landmass and less people living there. So the issues around climate and other areas in drought and other things that are not traditionally insured are starting to impact those communities and social elements that go around those from your businesses, but people who live in those regional areas as well. So there's a real moving demographic change now going on.
Yeah, we've just got someone here that said the Queensland Premier is proudly backing a massive new riverside development in Brisbane in a prime flood zone. How can the insurance industry better influence these poor planning decisions?
I think this is one of the things we talk a lot about with government, and the big issue is our three levels of government. So you've got your federal, state, and then the local councils who release the land, and we don't have any coordinated strategy on that. We try as an industry, we lobby against this happening. The politicians themselves say we should stop doing this, but we have not collectively found a way to stop it. This is crazy because on top of that, the value of these assets keeps increasing because we don't have enough housing. So the value of properties go up and therefore the insurance claim is higher. And we have employment issues in that you cannot get trades. In regional Australia now, it often costs more to repair your house than the value of the house. So all of these factors are playing against pushing up the cost of premium, which becomes, it increases the protection gap that we all are well aware of.
It's interesting. A couple of years ago, Minister Stephen Jones went over to London with a delegation from the ICA as well, similar to what's just happened with Dr. Molino. And when Minister Jones got back, he said at an ICA forum the next day, his opening line was, "Building on floodplains is stupid and it's got to stop."
Yeah.
He's right.
Yeah.
So not just climate, but also we've got a question here, just the regularity around the threats and dangers with the technology. So they've used the example of taxi industry v Uber, and Uber just obviously came in so quickly, and then the government's just caught going, oh, well, they're caught lacking really because of Uber's dominance. So what are the threats and the dangers there when it comes to those regulations?
Okay. I think from my perspective, this is where we come back to understanding what does the customer want and what value are we adding to them. So in a world where technology is there and AI, what's to stop a customer just doing their own research, buying their own policy, whereas we should be adding value as an industry. And what are they looking for around that, which was probably risk prevention, it's understanding of risk, and it's us understanding what are the challenges they're going to face and the products that they're going to need, because that's going to evolve quite significantly in the coming years. So I think we've got to be really conscious of this. We don't want to be threatened by whatever the insurance version of Uber is. We actually want to go, how do we evolve and think about where the customers are going and help them get there?
Just quickly on that, adding that, I mean, I keep looking at the stats so far of the amount of premium that is put into the marketplace in Australia and globally by brokers compared to the direct insurance market premiums. And we're growing slightly, year on year. And I think that's because people now, they want to trade and transact efficiently, but they actually want advice on domestic policies, on their home, their small businesses, their assets. So I'm sort of sensing the technology piece of trading and transacting online, people buying policies. My kids have no idea about insurance, but the reality is they want to just trade it easily. But when it comes down to, Dad, what do I do when this happens? They want advice. So I think clients are more attuned to the fact that this is a complex purchase. It's not just to jump in an Uber and you can get from A to B, or a taxi and get to A to B. It's a complex product. That frustrates people. We've got to try and take away the complexity, and we do that through giving advice. And I think people are starting to change, providing brokers change to make it more effective as to how they can efficiently trade and transact online. So that's my observation more so than a real tool.
There is so many questions coming through, so thank you everyone for being so proactive on the app. The theme for...
Just quickly before you dive into the next one, just 10 seconds.
Yes.
I think all those things are particularly true around emerging risk categories. So where the market really doesn't understand, so for instance, cyber risk and the way, it's been an insane 18 months in the way that organizations and increasingly individuals are thinking about cyber risk. And the market really doesn't get it, I think, in a lot of ways. And in those emerging risk categories, I think that's where some of the opportunities to really be a partner and people see you as a professional partner, not just a provider, not just hooking you up with a product. Some of those opportunities really lie, I think, for telling that story.
Dom, I'll stick with you when we're talking about talent and succession, just to again get that perspective from outside industry. So where is the talent of the future coming from, and what will be, I guess, what's it going to look like, and how different will it be from the past of what so many of these people have been in industry, some that, you know, almost 30 years more. How different is it going to be?
I'm incredibly interested to know everyone's views on this, because maybe I'm an outlier here, but I feel like, so about 20 years ago, one of the first projects I worked on was a book called Generation Y. I don't know if people remember that. It feels like a lifetime ago, but there was a time where like Gen Ys were next gen at work. And all the things we said about Gen Y were they're super purpose driven. They don't want to come in and do their time at the bottom. They want to move up the organization quickly. They're interested in jumping between organizations. Loyalty is a thing of the past. Then we said about millennials, and now we're saying about Gen Z. Sometimes I do wonder if it's actually just that's what young people are always like. And whether some of the differences are maybe less intractably generational, and we just kind of grow up and forget that we were all like that at one point. But I do think there are a couple of areas where the differences do seem material. And I think one of the big ones is people being willing to work outside of their area of training. And so like I'm doing work with a big engineering company at the moment, and all the engineering grads don't want to go and work in aviation when they've done an aeronautical engineering degree. They all want to go and work in Silicon Valley for a tech startup. And I think learning to look for talent in non-traditional places, there's a lot more like lateral mobility, I think now, particularly amongst younger generations who just frankly seem much more willing to go, I know I did a science degree, but I'm going to join a consultancy, or I know I did an accounting degree, but I'm going to become an XYZ. And I think that just opens the market up. And then the second and final thing on it is it does feel like the trend that is real is that thing we've often said around, we want to be connected to more than just a job. We want to be connected to a real sense of purpose. That seems to be amping up in a way that I think is both real, but a huge opportunity for this room when you stop thinking about the fact that we sell insurance policies or connect with insurance policies and start thinking about the fact that the story is we protect what matters most to you. We save houses, we save livelihoods. I think it's a room with an amazing story, but I just think storytelling is becoming more and more and more important. Yeah, I'd love to know if that squares well with people's views, but.
Soft skills, so we've heard that from outside, Dom, from his outside perspective, but what about within?
I hugely agree on purpose, and I think we are a purpose-led industry, so it fits well. And you see graduates come in, and graduates have come through with that same enthusiasm. So there is an age thing in it. I do find that. I think as it moves forward, it's how adaptable are people, because things change rapidly. So are they willing to change with it? And I don't know the answer to this yet, but we now have facts. I was going to say knowledge. I don't know if that's the right word, but we have facts at our fingertips. It's going to be how do people use them, because you would send a graduate away to research something for like 3 weeks. They can do it now in like 3 minutes. And therefore, how you use things is shifting, and how they adapt to that is going to be important.
Just from my perspective, one thing that always I focus on at the moment is I've been in the industry 37 years. I was taught insurance by my father and my father-in-law, who were both born in the 1930s. And then I've been teaching my kids about insurance, it was almost 100 years later. And the reality is that we are just passing down existing knowledge and inherited knowledge through the generations. We're at the tipping point now, as I mentioned at the beginning, about total innovation, where we need to start looking at the next generation as the leaders of our industry. They need to drive the agenda. They need to connect with the customer base. They need to demonstrate the relevance about the industry and how we evolve going forward. Now, we as the elder generation can give them the base core knowledge about the principles of insurance, how it works, but the innovation is not going to come from us, right? The innovation is going to come from the generation that can do that research report in 3 minutes rather than 3 months. So I think there needs to be a real shift towards sort of reverse mentoring and leading from the new generation up into the upper echelons. So that's something we're looking at.
Lastly, from me, I would love you just to maybe just give one key message to this incredible room on what you think that they can do over this next 12 months to shape change.
For me, collaboration and working together. I know the insurance industry in Australia it's depending on your age demographic, it's either the Hunger Games or Lord of the Flies. You're literally just trying to kill each other all day, every day. but coming together and collaborating with all of the broking communities, the insurer communities, the ICA, the UAC, NIBA, is going to give you a position of strength to be able to represent Australia as a collective customer across the global landscape. So I think that you're in it together, you've got to work together. Yes, you need to compete, but don't forget that you are representing one country.
Yeah, I might just build on that because I agree with it. I think affordable insurance is the right of every Australian and every Australian business, and that's in danger at the moment with the protection gap. We need to speak as one voice on that to help the country move forward because it is going to be absolutely vital over the next 20 years, and one voice makes a difference.
From my perspective, probably two little things. I'm a big believer in public-private partnerships are going to form part of the future. We need risk capital from insurers. We bring the private, the consumer part, and I think governments need to pay their part too. They are going to be providers of risk whether they like it or not. They don't want to be insurance companies. I understand that. But the reality is when things go horribly wrong, there's not going to be enough insurance capital to respond to everything. There's communities to support. They are going to be there. Our challenge is to bring them along to the front of the queue as opposed to wait till afterwards. And we all hear the 97%, 3% type investment in upfront mitigation versus response. That changes, but my view is we've got to try and find innovative ways to bring them forward in a public-private partnership before the events happen, so communities, our clients, the businesses they represent, can actually respond earlier, faster, and get things back. Working with insurers as risk providers as well. So, my take.
Dom, final words.
I think for me, it is the future is not a place we're going. It's a place we're creating, and the way it feels like everyone is saying that gets created is together. If we all knew what we all knew, we would be unstoppable type thing. And secondly, by leaving the customer right where they should be, which is at the center of our thinking and the stories that we tell and the services that we provide. So I think if we can do it together with the customer in the middle, that feels like where the future lies.
We're about to hit morning tea. Tomorrow I'm going to talk a lot about purpose, passion, about wellness, well-being. My big thing is mindfulness, micro breaks and movement. I would love to hear what you're all doing in this high pressure. Pressure is a privilege in all of your roles, but what are you doing for your own well-being and when it comes to that mindfulness movement or all those micro breaks? What do you love?
I'm a 6 a.m. get out of bed and go. Like it's my time, 6 till 7. No interruptions, no bothers, no emails. That's my time. So
Are you walking, meditating?
Walking, running,
Yep.
HIIT programs, different things.
Fantastic.
I spend most of my life on aeroplanes, so I've worked out that the Wi-Fi on aeroplanes never ever works. Trust me, they never work. So I just sit there and I watch films and I chill out. It's the only downtime I get.
Fantastic.
I'm the same. I start the day with a walk, have my breakfast, and only then do I turn on the emails and the messages. So give myself that break. Yeah.
And Dom?
Mine, this is going to sound very trite, but it's do things I love with people I love. That's just how I do it.
Wonderful. Well, great that you got the pink call again today to fit in with Lauren, the DJ, and Brooke, the MC. So it's fantastic to have you as our keynote speaker and to join this incredible panel. Let's hear it for Dom and our panel today.